investment. We need to have more competitive tax structure. We need to eliminate unnecessary regulations. I believe that Idaho is positioned well to come out of this tough time. We're blessed to have a very diverse economy that's rooted in production. From agriculture to computer chips, we can produce anything in Idaho. We need legislators that understand their role in growing the economy is simply to help create the environment that attracts business to invest and grow. I look at legislative ideas with a three-way test. Is it constitutional? Can we afford it? And do we need it? If the answer to any of these questions is no, then I will not be supportive. Idaho is an incredible place to live and raise a family. That legacy must continue, and I believe that I can help. So I'm asking for your support on May 15th.
I'm Roger Hunt, running for House Seat 12A. I've been here in Napa for about 18 years. Retired a couple of years ago after 30 years with the company and made some changes and just found myself with maybe a possibility that I could take a few months off every year if I were to be hired by my voters in my district. I'm a lifelong conservative, physical and social, and I've dabbled in politics in the background a lot during my life. It's uncomfortable to be up here in front. I'm probably not outnumbered as much as Maria is, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here and that you're here. My wife is here too, but I won't have her stand. We have 5 children, 8 grandchildren, and if anybody wants to see pictures, my wife probably has those. But I'm a constitutionalist. I believe the Constitution was put here to protect our God-given rights. I believe in natural laws. I believe the founders who wrote the Declaration of Independence had it right when they said we are endowed with certain unalienable rights. And for that reason, governments were formed to protect those rights and not to be intrusive. I feel government has become too large. We're over-regulated, overtaxed, and we can't exercise our freedoms the way I think we should. Just ask for your vote, and thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Steve Nibel. I'm running for House of Representatives in District 12, Seat A. I've lived in the Treasure Valley here for 40 plus years. I currently run a small construction business with my wife, whom you already met, and I decided to run because I wanted to represent the people. I didn't feel like we were being represented very well in the legislature. The money in the membership seems to be the ruling factor there nowadays, and we have these party line votes straight down the line where everybody agrees to everything. And our local tax structures, our urban renewal is hurting all of our small business. We need to bring some structure from the state to the local level on this. I am a firm believer in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment rights, and we need to fund our education better. It seems like we just don't have enough by the time it filters down to the bottom, and we need to work towards keeping our balanced budget. Property rights, we need to take a look at our state government. I believe that it's just grown too much and it's gotten too big, and it seems to be taking up a lot of our revenues to fund what you might call a little unnecessary programs. So we need to take a look at that. We could put some of those funds back into the education system, and we can support our agriculture a little bit better. And I'd just like to thank you for your time and vote on May 15th. Thank you.
My name is Todd Lakey. I'm running for the Senate in District 12. My wife Jen and I have been married 26 years. And Robert, I can't introduce my wife either. I looked out there and she shook her head, so I will not stand. I've been an active member of the community and an active Republican for 17 years. I've been involved in both the public and private sector. I started out as a deputy prosecuting attorney for Canyon County, then served as a Canyon County Commissioner from 1999 to 2004, and I've been a small business owner in private practice since 2004. I'm a common sense conservative Republican. My first priority in the legislature will be the economy. I think government doesn't create jobs, it creates opportunities for the private sector to create jobs. It allows them to have an environment with less regulation and incentives to strengthen our economy. I believe in keeping taxes low and minimizing government regulation. I think that allows taxpayers, both businesses and individuals, to be successful, to keep more of their own money and invest it in the economy. I support education and transportation. I think those two things are foundations of our successful future. Having been married 26 years and a father of 5, I know and understand that the family is a foundational unit of a successful community. And I will fight to protect family values, traditional family values in the Idaho legislature. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate you attending tonight. And my name is Todd Lakey. I'm running for Senate District 12.
Good evening. I'm Bob Schaefer, born and raised in Napa, educated in Idaho. I realize that our time is valuable, so I will not waste any of it. We'll get right to business. First, urban renewal is the worst thing since the Edsel. But the Edsel never took property tax dollars from schools and other taxing districts. Urban renewal does. Over $55 million per year. Could schools and the other districts use this money? They certainly could. Second, the land board, consisting of the governor, secretary of state, attorney general, state controller, and school superintendent, take money from the endowment fund that should go to the schools. Instead, they spend it foolishly on storage units in competition with private sector. They are in the process of building a brew pub in downtown Boise with endowment monies. And all the while they have realtors looking for other businesses to conquer. If we allow brew pubs to be run by the government, we should also take property taxes away from the existing businesses. The land board has lost money on all of their commercial ventures. By their record, $680,000 this past year. This is not monopoly money. It's past time for the land board to stop wasting school money and put it in the endowment fund where it should be. As your senator, I will work to continue correcting these problems so we keep government out of private business. Please vote for Bob Schaefer for Senate District 12. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now that you've done the introductions, we're also adding one more component that we've never added until this year, and that is the opportunity for a short rebuttal to a statement that your opponent has made. If there are 3 candidates, please wait until all 3 candidates have responded so that before you rebut. And give me the sign if you want to do that. Just don't burst out. And then if you rebut after your opponent speaks, then your opponent can rebut. Keep those at 15 seconds. I can generally tell if we need to go beyond that. Generally, we can wind it up after just one back and forth. And but we do want to encourage that so that we have some good spirited conversations and get to the issues in some cases. Scott's going to ask the first question, and Robert Schaefer, you are the first person to answer, and Maria, you will be last this time. Okay? And you have 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. One of the issues that has generated a lot of controversy and headlines from this past legislative session is the Occupy Boise movement. In fact, it was in the news today with the Department of Administration issuing new rules about exactly how one can protest on the Capitol Mall. Whether the message of Occupy Boise is clear or unclear, that's not what I'm going to ask about, but one of the perhaps unintended results of this is quite a vigorous discussion about freedom of expression and freedom of speech. So my question is, just where does the state's authority to regulate freedom of expression begin and end?
Where does it begin and end? Well, I'll tell you right now, that's not campground. And those people have every freedom to congregate and express their concerns. But that's as far as it goes. Living there is not part of the agenda of free speech.
Where does it begin and end? Well, I think freedom of expression is part of what this county is based on. You have constitutional protections for that. Those that serve in our military fight to protect that freedom. That said, I think it begins with the ability to express your opinion. But I think it ends when it inconveniences or costs others. I don't think that Occupy Boise should have a right to camp there in perpetuity. They have the right to express their opinion and gather, but they should not be able to stay there as long as they want. Hopefully the sprinklers are coming on, I think, this spring. That's it.
Freedom of speech is something that we need to protect, and Occupy Boise movement. They're using freedom of speech they're erecting a monument there to try and do that. When time comes, it's been there for a long time, and they're actually camping there. It becomes a eyesore or an infringement on the other people's rights to use that piece of land. And so as time goes on, I think that they need to be able to carry out their right for freedom of speech and to erect a monument to do that, but they need to, there should have been some discussions there and possibly downscaled the size of it and still carried on with their right to free speech there at the State House, but just not in the manner that they're doing now. I think it's gone beyond, and so they need to look at other ways of getting their message out there and exercising their free speech.
I believe that, as one of my political science professors said a long time ago, he said, "My right to swing my fist ends at my neighbor's nose." In other words, according to natural rights, I can exercise my natural rights until they interfere with somebody else's natural rights, and then there's going to have to be some compromise. I believe in freedom of speech, and there are avenues to do that. Camping on public land without permit is not freedom of speech. It's squatting on public land. That's our land. They're defacing it. They're depriving that piece of property from use by the rest of the public. So, and the state, I think, does have a right to make rules regarding state property to protect that and for the whole population to use.
Yeah, I would agree with just about everything Roger just said. Not to mention the fact that, in my opinion, just because there's a tent there doesn't necessarily mean there's an act of free speech taking place. I don't even know how much of the time there actually are people there, you know, through the evening hours and things of that nature. So, but I agree with what Roger said.
Okay. Yeah, I believe we need to regard and hold our amendments dearly. The freedom of expression and speech is something that we have to have. It's probably the expression that got totally out of control. And again, I would agree with fellow candidates that we don't move in on our properties like that.
I guess we're all in the same, thinking the same tune. I believe that our freedoms are special, but I think they went way beyond, and there's other ways they could have went about it. They're trashing the lawn, and it just looks like an eyesore. And I think the government should have the right and probably the obligation to take care of it and get it removed.
I guess I could say ditto to almost everyone. Free speech, yes, but trespassing, no. And that state land is partially mined, and I resent it that I can't go up and use it right now.
It was actually my bill that gave the Department of Administration authority to do that, House Bill 693. There's a prior bill that we'd worked on the language, and then we got that bill, and Representative Bedke on the House side, and then Senator Davis and I on the Senate side worked on that, trying to balance the interests of people to express themselves, have free speech, but also the state's interest in protecting those public grounds that all of us share in. And so what we tried to do is to allow Department of Administration to have a content-neutral regulation so that they're not regulating what people say, but they're controlling the grounds there, so that you can't just continually camp there or occupy it, so that other people that want to speak on other issues don't have a chance to use it as well.
Okay, Maria?
I see the freedom of expression as just that. Definitely, when we're talking about inconvenience or cost, to really look at what we're talking about, and it's the freedom to be able to express, and in this case, occupy. And it is a really sensitive issue. I think that the people should be able, in any circumstance, to be able to express themselves, which is what I believe folks that were there are doing, and many may continue to do. So, thank you.
Okay, Mike? You ask the next question. We'll have 1 minute on this, and we will start with Todd. And Bob, you'll be the last person.
Thank you. Since the economy went south, so to speak, people have heard a lot about job creation for the last 4 or 5 years now. So, how would you grade the legislature's job creation efforts over the last few years?
Thank you, Mike. I think they're making good efforts in trying to do that. Having not been there and seen and watched everything, I'm not familiar with all bills that were passed. But I know there was this last session some bills that supported education and innovation. I think it's important when I get to the legislature that I help create jobs by keeping taxes low and keeping regulation in check, and giving them the opportunity to grow. So I think they've taken some good steps. We're seeing some additional revenue come into the state, and I know Governor Otter has charged the Department of Commerce to make additional efforts to promote Idaho. So I see some good work and some more work to do.
Steve?
In talking to my constituents out here and small businesses here in Nampa area, taxes seem to be a big problem to them, and it's kind of detrimental to their ability to create more jobs here. I think that the legislature needs to look towards that more to help to promote a lot of the small business growth. They need to help. We need to look towards better ways to help our agricultural to make sure that it stays healthy in this state, as that's one of our mainstays here. And that's about it.
I believe government does not create jobs, except government jobs, which usually take them away from the private sector. We in the government, assuming we're all elected, or some of us will be, we can establish an environment that would be favorable or unfavorable to business. And I think the legislature took a tiny step in that direction with the tax cuts that they did, you know, with the personal and corporate. I don't think it was enough to do a whole lot, but it's a step in the right direction. Lower taxes, throw out the unnecessary regulation, and allow businesses to grow and hire people and create new jobs.
Yeah, they did make some small steps this last session, lowering the corporate and individual tax rates. There has been some additional changes made at the Department of Commerce, which does have the ability, if they're operated properly, to be a spokesperson for the state. And I've met with some of the new staff at the Department of Commerce, and they understand the benefits that the private sector can bring to them when they're out trying to recruit business to come to the state. So I think that that's something that ultimately could help. There's a lot of talk about eliminating or lowering the business property tax, and I think that's something too that would be greatly helpful if that were to be able to be passed.
I can't believe there's not a legislator over there who wouldn't want jobs. I think they've all worked hard to try to find ways to bring jobs. This year, I think they did starting the process to get it going. I know Jeff Sayer, the new director, personally. In the past, you asked, I'm not sure that the Department of Commerce did the job that they should have been doing because the gentleman running it, as I believe, was not a businessman. Jeff Sayer is a businessman. So I think we've got some good things coming ahead for us.
I believe, not knowing exactly what happened last year, not being in there, I don't know exactly what they've done to help improve things. But in talking to small businesses, I know they're paying thousands in property taxes, and my thoughts are if they weren't so high, maybe they could hire even just one person. And I think that's something we need to really look at.
With the decline in property values, there's been a real shift in taxes for cities, and businesses and rental property are taking the brunt of that. That makes it very tough. I think maybe shifting of the tax structure would help, and to start at the first again, I think maybe I'd give a D to the legislature for the past few years for this. One thing that's happened, which really is a concern, is the state land board is starting to encroach on private businesses. I think they need some direction and coaching on which way they should go. And the legislature could certainly do that if you could ever get it out of committee.
I think this last session we tried to do a lot to improve our economy, and we're starting to see our revenues reflect that. In addition to lowering those rates that we charge our businesses and our individuals, we put the IGM's program together to fund entrepreneurs. We put 47% of our general fund into K-12 education because education is key. Over the last few years, we've started up Western Idaho College that fits that critical community college need in our community, and it's been the fastest growing community college in the country. Because of that, this year we took sales tax off of aircraft parts because we have a very excellent and growing business here, and they were competing against other states that didn't require that, and they came in and showed that that is going to put money back into the state. This year I carried a bill on negotiated rulemaking to make sure that when agencies affect our businesses, they take their needs into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, Maria, I'm going to move your mic closer. Okay. Or I can lean up. Here. I think I will go with Mr. Osborne and probably a D as far as the state legislature. Has the state legislature looked at all ideas for job creation? I believe that some of those from Democratic legislators, some of those ideas have not been considered. There is more that can be done. I believe that investing in education is key. We've got to look at increasing revenue. The discussion of cuts, that's not the way to go about it, but rather to look at creative, innovative ways to increase revenue. With jobs, it's critical. I totally agree that we must support and provide some of the support that's been given to some of the big corporations to small businesses. It's been proven that jobs are more readily created by small businesses. My time's up.
I have been endorsed by NFIB for years because I have supported small business. Small business provides 55% of the jobs in the nation. All government can do is get out of the way, cut taxes, cut spending, and slim up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person who will answer the question is Hubert, and we will go this way, okay? And Sherry, you'll be last, and Scott's going to ask that question.
Well, another issue that was made a lot of headlines this past session, ethics. The session started out with a resignation of a senator amidst some complaints. There was a ethics committee that looked into another lawmaker. The Democrats wanted an independent ethics commission, I should say, an independent ethics commission established that could not be influenced by lawmakers. That didn't happen. So the question is, how well is the legislature doing in policing itself or looking out for the interests and concerns of the constituents about maybe the quote-unquote old boys club or lawmakers trying to work for their own personal interests?
I think the legislature is proving that it is unable to police itself. An independent commission is a good idea, but who would appoint? The legislature? The best policeman is an elected, educated electorate who will elect ethical men and women to the legislature. It is my opinion recall laws should be made easier.
Since I've been in the legislature, we've had ethics panel meet two times on the Senate side. The first, I think, was 2004, and they conducted an investigation. The bipartisan committee recommended a sanction, and that senator ended up resigning from his seat. This last year, there were allegations made against chairman of a committee on the Senate side, and again, there was a bipartisan committee that reviewed that, and they unanimously cleared him of the charges that were made against him. I think that is an effective way to monitor that, and I think the backstop, the real check on that are the voters who send them there because they are the ones who will decide whether they go back.
Am I next? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Definitely the people, just like someone was elected, and we've got a perfect opportunity this year, and there have been a lot of questions about certain, not only legislative elected officials, but also other elected officials. In the end, it's the people that elect, and one of the things that I ask, look at that eye of the individual, the integrity, the honesty, and are they going to serve the public, not serve themselves, and serve their own self-interest, and it's really critical that voters do that.
Can ethics really be legislated? I think not. You're not born with them, but you do come by them, and generally, honestly, if you're raised right and you believe in the Almighty God. If one knows not right from wrong, they don't belong in there, and they should be made easier to remove. We were lacking, I think, 2 votes to cleanse the Senate, and it simply wasn't possible. We need more people with inbuilt ethics in the Senate. Thank you.
I agree that the people are ultimately the bottom line and the ultimate answer. But I think it's important to have ethics rules and ethics review in the Senate and the House as well. You need both. I do have a sense that there's room for improvement in how it functions, and I would look for ways to do that. I'm used to working with professionals that regulate themselves, architects and engineers and attorneys. And so I think it can be done, but if I see that it's not working, I'm open to the concept of an independent panel.
I think that the question of ethics in the Senate, I wasn't too happy about the closed door predetermination of whether there was something that should be brought forward and then turned over to or made available to the public if there was a problem. We need to straighten that out. It needs to be more in the open for the people to see if there is any conflicts or if there's an ethics problem going on in the legislature. When there are conflicts that create an ethics problem, the people just need to be aware of them right out front. And I think that in the legislature we have a problem with conflicts when we have legislators that are involved in other boards or committees, different types of political committees that they might belong to at the same time. And it shouldn't be that way. We should have legislators that are just there to do that job and legislate and not be parts of these other organizations and boards that will create problems. Thank you.
I think in a free society where the people get to select their leaders, if they lose their faith in their leaders, I think it results in things like low voter turnout, like what's the use of voting? Same crook's going to go back in. It's sad that we don't get a better turnout. That's the ultimate check on ethics problems. I think we as a legislator need to be absolutely perfect when it comes to ethics. We cannot have our constituents wondering if we're in there for ourselves or for the public. I think an independent commission at this time would be, I'm against creating another government agency right now. I think the bipartisan within its own party, that like legislature and Senate, it seems to be working. If for some reason that fails, then we'll have to rethink that.
I think that there may be some things that we can do from a transparency perspective that would help. But the problem that I have with an independent commission is, as a voter, how do I remove that person if that person isn't worthy of the position? At least with the situation that we have now, all the people who are sitting essentially in judgment are elected officials. So if they don't do their job properly, we have the ability to remove them.
Okay. I would concur that the legislator and being voted by the public, we should maintain the highest standards, no question. Ethical issues come up, again, in the business world. I've been around it for many, many years. And there are confidentiality issues as well. How do you handle those? Those are difficult situations. From what I understand, some of the circumstances we were talking about, I won't mention names, were handled by their peers, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. That's probably in my mind right now one of the best processes to use.
I don't believe anybody should govern themselves. And just like the police department, you get, you know, the cities are overseen by the counties and they're overseen by the states. I believe it starts out with the voters knowing who they're voting for and not just going by a sign or, you know, actually doing the research. And if it comes down to it, I think it should be up to the voters to decide, so it should be easier to remove them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought it was It's going on again. I read it again.
No, that's all right. Scott, do you have another question ready?
We have lots of questions. This one comes from the audience. Everyone wants to cut taxes, yet any business owner knows that you must invest as well. So what would you do? How would you invest? What would you invest Idaho tax dollars on or in?
We start with Todd. You guys are getting the rhythm, right? Over here, then over there, okay?
Didn't I start once already?
All right, Steve, it's your shot.
I'm trying to get the rhythm then.
Okay, Scott, what was that at the end? You said invest what now, the state?
Bottom line of the question is, how would you invest Idaho's tax dollars? What's the best thing that where you would invest the Idaho tax dollars?
To create business?
How would
I
you
invest them?
spend the money
Okay.
to create jobs and improve the economy?
Okay, that's what the question was. Well, first of all, the first and foremost would be to spend the money on education. We need to make sure that we get those essential services we have in the state's responsibility funded properly. And then look towards seeing if there's anything that we can do to promote the small business growth. I believe that that's one of the staples of our economy here. If we can get our small businesses going again, then the rest is going to follow. The big business will come in and do their part and take over.
Well, the 47% of the state budget goes to education. That's mandated by the Constitution. I think we need to look at the Constitution, state and federal, because they're both, we take an oath to support both, to make sure that the constitutionally mandated programs are being funded properly. So education obviously is the top of that list. I think government should not do anything, they should not be involved in competition with the private sector. So I think investing, or I like to say spending, public tax money to compete in the private sector is wrong. And if we stop doing the unnecessary things and funding the constitutionally mandated things, I think that's what we need to look at, and that's where the money needs to go.
Your question had kind of a business application built into it. So I would answer simply by saying the same way a business would invest, and that is in things that you're relatively certain or have at least some optimism about a return on. So we have to prioritize those things that, from the state's perspective, has a chance of returning, whether it's job creation or a better workforce or things of that nature. So I fully support funding education to the level at which we can, and I also firmly believe that things like CWI will play a huge role going forward to the success of the state.
Okay. That is a very good question, and I would concur with my fellow constituents here that education is without a doubt on the highest list. Appreciate CWI and the investment in technical training. I think that's a huge opportunity. to train folks that are on the ground with the ability, whether it be welding or diesel mechanic. Those are the kind of things that create stability. As far as, again, we just simply need jobs, jobs, jobs. I think the first shot into the iGEM was a good emphasis. Probably not enough dollars there to make a huge difference, but again, shot the cannon over the bow that we want to keep and retain our educated young people here that are creating jobs for tomorrow and not have them leave our state.
I believe in investing into the small business and education, into the trades. There's more and more emphasis in education on the technical side, and I think we need to go back to the trade side as well, because sooner or later we're going to end up with kids that want to be having a big office job and nobody there to build it.
Well, pretty much the same thing. I think we need to de-emphasize the humanities side, which you can get a degree in social engineering and not have a job at the end of it. But if you are a plumber, you're pretty much guaranteed a job and you'll live pretty well. And I also would resist allowing the government to compete with private enterprise. And there seems to be some people in the state legislature and on the state land board that are intent on doing that, and I think that should be stopped.
Yeah, well, the question was, what should we invest in? And I think there's 4 areas where we spend most of our money in the state. It's education, infrastructure, public safety, and then health and welfare. Obviously, as you think about those 4 things, what we want to be investing in is education and infrastructure. Infrastructure is what lets our businesses grow their businesses. You know, we are a production state. We need those roadways to get our products to market. But we also need to invest in technology to get it there. You know, I've carried bills to allow broadband to expand to smaller communities throughout the state. This year I carried the Idaho Video Franchise Act, which gets more competition and video and education throughout the community. But education and infrastructure are where we want to be able to put that money to keep growing our economy.
3 areas that, as I've spoken with voters in District 12, very consistent with what other candidates are saying, the top one being education. We've got to invest in our present and future and create the most vibrant, qualified workforce. If we're talking about attracting jobs to Idaho, that's got to be the top one. The creation of jobs, the second, and that very consistent. These are the things that the people care about. The third one that hasn't been mentioned, other than maybe indirectly by Senator McKenzie, is a safety net for those that are the most vulnerable in the state of Idaho. The concern, as we talk about cuts, instead of increasing revenue, is that we start attacking some of those programs that are taking care of the most vulnerable, the disabled, the elderly, the children.
The proper role of government is to not compete with private sector business. Very clear. Education, education, education. The only thing that we can really build on is our younger citizens. Education. Thank you.
This sounds like a record, but education. I think it's important that we support our students at K through 12 and provide opportunities and incentives for them to go on and further their education, whether it be at the technical or community college level or the university level. We need to support the research and innovation universities that we have, but also CWI. We need that trained workforce to build the businesses and to provide the support for the Microns and the Simplots of the world. It's important that we also fund transportation and infrastructure. Those things are the system and the lifeblood of our economy. Right now, we're not even keeping up with maintenance. our bridges and our roadways, and we need to do a better job there. Also, expansion of technology. That's the future, and we need to make sure that technology, if I can invest money, is available in the rural communities as well.
Okay. For an hour, we have been very calm, sedated, boring. We really, really need to mix this up because I can see 3 people out here nodding off. Okay? So, here's the challenge. It's now your turn to ask a question of your opponent. And keep in mind that your question is not going to be a political statement on your behalf. Get to the question and let the opponent answer. You can do a follow-up question with that if it's related, if you need, so that your opponent can answer if they didn't do an adequate job of answering. You have 1 minute to answer. And candidates, let's see, we're going to judge you tonight on how you can shake things up with questions about your opponents. You know your opponents, you should be able to ask them great questions. And I'm tempted to do one more round after this, so get another question ready. Okay? All right. And, Rick, you're first.
Am I?
According to my little chart that I'm doing. Did I give you a chance to go first, Sherry? Sherry, you're it.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Wow. That's a hard one.
I know.
You go first. Do you believe that a legislator or a senator should be involved in any other political committees?
Political committee.
Any other political committees or any other seats, you know, sitting on any other boards?
Oh, I bet she means because you're on the highway district.
Oh, is that the
what you
question?
mean?
Oh, okay. That is a very good question, of which, when I made the decision to put my name in the hat, the first thing I did was clear it with my spouse and family when they gave me the green light. My next was, I had recently been elected as commissioner for the Canyon Highway District. I told them that because that's a 4-year appointment, it's part-time, if I had to lose that position, I would not run. I would not put my name in the hat. They said, they called the AG, and he said, no, actually we have senators and representatives currently who are highway district commissioners. So I'm going to have a busy life. I've got my employer who said go for it. I got the highway commission who said go for it. And if you as the public tell me to go for it, I'll be over there in the legislature as well. So, yep.
Okay. So Rick, you can ask your opponent a question now.
Oh boy. Let's see. We talked about, well, again, there's been some kind of mixed discussions, and this is a hot topic, and I just ask you to share your thoughts, Ms. Nibel, on urban renewal. You know, I'm a banker, I'm a businessman. I have seen urban renewal actually do some good things. I had an opportunity to be involved with Twin Falls. They spent a good amount of their urban renewal dollars to bring...
Rick, you're making a statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Anyway, tell me about your thoughts on urban renewal.
Well, I believe it just created a back door. There's been a lot of things that the voters have voted down, and it's been taken right through the back door and put into effect through urban renewal. And the other thing is you've got council members and mayors and other people sitting on those committees, and I think it's a contradiction there that they shouldn't be sitting on those committees that do urban renewal, because to me it should be up to the taxpayers. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes.
Quickly. Again, I've seen urban renewal work well. An example of Twin Falls with Shaboni in
Okay.
2014.
You just ask a follow-up
Oh,
question.
follow-up question. Okay.
For her to answer.
Did you know that there were other folks involved in the urban renewal committees as well, besides elected officials?
No, I did not.
Okay. There are.
Okay? Now you guys got a good example from Rick on what not to do.
Sorry. Sorry,
We always
Vicki.
need one, Rick, we always need
Okay.
one, so thank
I'll
you.
be the example.
Robert?
I like also how you assume that we know our opponents. We're busy campaigning. I've gotten to talk to Roger like twice, so. What's your position on Idaho's business property tax? Excuse me, business personal property tax.
Well, there's some details on taxes. There's a lot of taxes probably out there that we don't know all about. A tax on business is a tax on people, and that will affect the bottom line of that company. When you take more of a business's money, they have less to invest and to create jobs. So I think, Idaho may be the most Republican state as far as the legislature goes, but it's not the most business-friendly, tax-friendly in the nation. And I think that's something we need to look at as legislators. What can we do to spur business? And definitely need to look at the business taxes when we look at that.
Okay, Roger?
I noticed in the questionnaire that Vicki sent out, you weren't sure on the 3 educational referendums. I was just wondering if you had made a decision.
Yeah, my position isn't necessarily that I'm not sure. My position is that I think it needs some time to have actual documented results. I can't imagine how difficult it would be to develop a plan as comprehensive as education reform. I would, if I was part of the decision-making process that came up with that plan, I would, and obviously I wasn't, I would certainly want the time to find out whether or not it worked. So that's why I just haven't made a final decision yet, because we haven't really seen those results. I'm sure what we'll find is probably some of it's really good and some of it's really bad. And there'll be constant change in education. There should be. But that's my position on it.
Okay. Steve? Who are you going to ask of your 2 opponents?
Robert, I'd like to ask you what your stand is on the urban renewal in some of these local taxing districts and the effects that you think that it's having on our local businesses, and whether you think the state should come in and try to control this a little bit. It seems to be out of control in a lot of our urban areas here in Idaho.
Yeah, there were several pieces of legislation last year that were considered that would put more constraints on urban renewal, and I think all of those deserve consideration. Anything that makes urban renewal or any other taxing structure more accountable to the people who pay the tax is a good thing. I do tend to look at urban renewal more as a local taxing issue as opposed to a state, because, as Rick mentioned, every urban renewal is different. Just because one urban renewal may not be acting or being as successful in dealing with the constituents that are paying that bill doesn't mean that they're all that way. So, like I said, I tend to look at urban renewal as a local issue. We have people that are involved that make the decisions that are both elected and non-elected, but and I'm definitely for more accountability. I think there should be more available access for comment and determining how that money will be spent.
Okay. Todd?
Vicki, you're probably going to downgrade me, but I do believe in Reagan's 11th commandment and not speaking ill of another Republican.
That's perfectly fine. Just spice it up while you do it.
Okay. I don't know if I can, like I said, I think some of these questions get couched in negative comments in the form of a question. And backgrounds and our points of view. So with that in mind, Bob, can you describe some of the difficult issues you faced when you were first in the legislature and what you learned and how it made you a better legislator?
Thank you. Yes, I can. And we hit right to work. That was very acrimonious. Some of the ladies that were supporting that required guards to take them to their cars. And the abortion issue, I held some of my compatriots in prayer during that. It was very, again, acrimonious. And that's not where I learned to pray, but it certainly did help. All of those things, when you're dealing with your fellow man and you see their harshness, that the way they treat other people, it causes one to not want to be doing that themselves.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, Robert, do unto others.
You know, Vicki, my mother always told me not to say anything bad about anyone.
That's why I said.
And
Nice to you.
it's not going to be very spicy. I've enjoyed, mine
You're
will
going
be-
to ask him a question.
I have to ask you a question. Well, it's quite unfortunate we don't have 2 seats, but for the Senate in 12, but that's the way it works. And so I hope, Todd, that you will tell the truth. Will it hurt you to lose?
Sure, Bob, it will hurt. It will hurt. But as I said, I've got respect for you, and so it hurts less.
Okay, Maria, we're not going to have you go through this exercise. Thank you very much. Curtis?
Thanks. I wanted to ask a question about energy policy. One of the platforms that you've talked about is energy and advocating natural gas, I think, as opposed to wind. One of the things that we're facing now is that for a lot of the utilities, wind is a low-cost resource because there really aren't other base load generation that they can use except for natural gas. Could you explain your position on that, and do you think that we should, going forward in the short term, use only natural gas as our base load resource for energy?
Using only natural gas just doesn't make sense. We already have the hydroelectric. The Boardman plant is being closed down because it's coal. And you say wind is low cost. I think you haven't done your homework if you're saying that, because every kilowatt hour of wind energy has to be backed up with the natural gas or some other form of energy, which makes the cost the same, and yet the companies still have to buy the wind energy. So how much more explanation do you want?
Do you need to have a follow-up to that? Curtis? Okay, all right. Hubert, then go ahead and pose your question.
When the Senate Republican caucus voted to keep your friend John McGee in leadership position, how did you vote?
Thank you. If you do get to be a member of the legislature, you will be told at the first time you go into caucus that you don't discuss what happens in caucus. The caucus chairman will address the media afterwards, but it is a breach of the trust that people have in that caucus meeting to discuss what happens here.
Did you have a follow-up to that, Hubert?
I would just comment that,
No, you can't comment. Like,
I will not
why
have a
did
follow-up.
13 others
I will not have a follow-up.
disclose how they voted?
Why did they?
Wow. Vicky can ask questions too.
You don't have to answer that, Chris.
I couldn't, you'd have to ask them.
Good point. All right. So, I failed at that too. So here is a question. I really took the time to study the ballot yesterday and take a look at it and look on the left of the ballot and the right of the ballot because I live in District 13. We're forced to declare what party we're going to vote for if we want to vote on the right of the ballot. If we choose to vote on the left of the ballot, people who live in District 13 have no one to vote for unless they're voting for the nonpartisan races. They have no races. There are no county opponents on the Democratic ticket, and there are no contested races on the Democratic side.
Isn't there a legislative race?
In District 13?
Yes.
Oh, but you're not contested, are you?
No, not.
Right. See, he's on the ballot. So but if I'm going to help make a decision on the direction of how my county is going to go via the legislature, the first step is to pick the nominees for the party. So the point that I'm going to get at is, all of you, what are you going to say to the voters out there when you go door to door? What are you telling them? Are you guiding them to a particular party to vote? Or are you, do you expect, I think the point, and I'm really making a political statement here. The legislature decided that there would be close primaries, and one of the concerns was that there would be the rhinos or the Republicans in name only who would cross over. And so now, virtually in some of these voting areas, you don't have any choices unless you do vote Republican, and you have no opportunity to really choose anyone in the contested races at the county level unless you declare your party. And certainly, we've always had to vote one way or the other. But now it's on the record, and now do you really think you've accomplished what you tried to accomplish? And I'm going to start with you, Curtis.
Yeah, and I'd make a correction. The legislature didn't choose to close those. The Republican Party did.
The party did.
And the party sued the Secretary of State, and then as a result of that, we allowed the party to close its primary.
Okay.
I've been a member to several state conventions and state meetings for the party, both as a delegate and then as a chairman for platform or resolutions. I've liked the status quo, but when the party chose to go the other way, we were required to do that. And so I've talked to a number of independent voters and others who expressed the same concern you had. You know, I just tell them each party has that choice, how they choose who their candidate is going to be, and we do have to respect that.
Okay.
I do not like it the way it is, and if I have any opportunity, I will try to change it back the way it was.
Great.
Yeah, I don't like the way it is either. Having to tell people that you have to be a registered Republican to vote, to have a choice. You know, a lot of people out there I'm finding are independent, and they vote for the person, not the party, and I think that it should be back that way.
Vicki, when I go knock on doors, I'm going to tell them to please vote for Rick Youngblood. I can tell you that I did understand that I lost a vote yesterday because they hadn't registered. They went and they were leaving, so they filled out their ballot, well, their absenteeism, and they had to vote all Democrat. And she looked at me and said, I'd have voted for you in a second, Rick, but I wasn't registered. So I would probably take a look at it myself.
Chris, are you still here? Okay. Just for clarification, I think that when you do, I think you still can declare what party you're going to vote when
Can
you
you in
vote
the
on the
primary?
absentee ballot.
Yeah.
She told me in the primary you couldn't.
Yeah, no, up until the day of election, you can.
Up till the day of election? Well, Then
Yeah,
I'd rather chase her down and get her straightened out then.
Well, and unfortunately though, because she has already voted,
Yeah, then we're done.
she's done.
Yeah.
So that's part of the education process, as I understand it, is that people need to know before they start voting,
Yeah.
and they have to declare
Hey,
first.
don't you work for the newspaper?
And we're going to.
That might be a great article.
You just scored 10.
Thank you.
Robert?
You started out by talking about an imbalance in numbers of candidates, which the only thing I could offer there is I think the Democratic Party probably needs to recruit more candidates. But I personally don't particularly like the closed primaries. Thank you. I think anything that hurts voter turnout does a disservice. So anything that we can do to encourage voting and make it less confusing is something that I would support.
Well, I think I support a party's right to determine what kind of primary they're having. It's their primary. So if the Republicans want to close their primary, they have, in my mind, they have a right to do that. I realize a lot of people are reluctant to publicize their stand, but again, it's a party activity, and so the party can set the rules. I'd like to say one thing, though. When you go in, whatever ballot you ask for, if you ask for a Democrat, for example, or you say you're a Democrat, then all of us up here will not be on that ballot. So if you wanted to, if you're going to cross, you can't do that either. So you have to vote one or the other. If you go in and say you're an independent, they'll give you the unaffiliated ballot. None of us are going to be on that. So if you want to vote for Robert, ask for the unaffiliated. And if you want to vote for me, ask for the Republican ballot.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks. I've talked to a lot of voters already, and there's quite a few of them are not too happy about that they have to give up some of their privacy and declare what party they're voting for. And for that reason, I'm not too sure that this is a good thing. The Republican Party, it is just the primaries, and so to do this is certainly within the right, but I think that it's hurting the vote, and it seems like there's a lot of people that aren't going to come out and vote. Not as many will vote because of this, and so therefore I think we need to look at this and maybe change it.
Okay.
I agree. I think it probably does have a negative impact on voter turnout. Those independents can be reluctant to declare what party they're in, but I do respect the Republicans and the Democrats and the independents' right to select their candidate in the primary election. In the general election, then you have everybody in the ballot, you can vote how you want. But I think I respect the Republican Party's right to select their candidate.
I was not the one driving this issue, and I'm still not going to tell you how I voted on things. But it's their choice, and I do respect certain choices, not all, but this one, yes.
Okay.
So, the Democratic primary is open. The Democratic Party chose to be and stay open. I do think that the things that have been done to sort of cleanse or purify, what it takes away is the choice of voters. For those of us that do look at the individual, I am a Democrat and very proud to be a Democrat. Have I always been blind and just gone, straight ticket? I look at the individual. What the Republicans closing the primary, what it takes away is being able to vote for the best person. I mean, regardless of the party. And what it does also, we know that in primaries, the turnout is very low. And what it does, it adds confusion and probably, it doesn't serve us, I think. in the short term or long term, does not serve the people.
Maria, I assume you'll vote on the Democratic side for yourself, right?
This time, yes.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. So we have a couple of questions here that we hope will liven it up a little bit. We're going to go for 30 seconds answers, and if we need to do some rebuttals, then we'll go ahead and play that game. And we'll start with Scott, and Mike has one as well. 30 seconds.
And this is another question from the audience. It has to do with the minimum wage. Are you in favor of increasing it? Do you favor raising it, or do you oppose raising it? And if you are opposed, why do you think a family of 4 can afford to pay rent, education, health, and home insurance?
And I think that's also medical.
Medical and taxes, too. How can a family of 4 get by, essentially?
And Robert?
In 30 seconds. I don't support raising the minimum wage, and it's actually simply just for one reason, and that is because I don't think that the economy can withstand it right now. To answer your question, I don't live on minimum wage. I don't know how I could possibly tell you how somebody should or shouldn't be able to. I know there are other safety net mechanisms out there to help people. I believe in those. I think that that they serve a purpose. Like I said, 30 seconds.
Okay, Roger?
Well, if the minimum wage worked, why don't we just raise it to $100 an hour? The fact is, if they raise it to $100 an hour, a lot of people are going to lose their job who need employment. You make businesses pay too high a wage for entry-level people, and it limits the number of entry-level people they can hire. Most of us started out at minimum wage when we started our working business. Most people over a few years get out of that, so it's not the same people there all the time.
I can't say that I would support raising the minimum wage. It would be detrimental, I think, to a lot of business, and it would end up costing more jobs in the end. So, but how can a family of 4 survive on it? That's a tough thing to do. I think it can be done. People have to learn to live within their means, and there are other help groups that can help people in this, and they need to look towards family and church, and they will better themselves and move on. But to raise minimum wage right now would be quite detrimental to our economy, I think.
Okay.
I tend to be kind of a free market person, so a minimum wage mandate causes me some discomfort, but I don't support raising the minimum wage. I think you increase cost of business. I don't think they can handle that right now, and if you increase cost of business, then you lose jobs. So I think it's important that we keep the economy going. We can help counteract that by, again, making opportunities available for these people to improve themselves through education, particularly to improve their employability.
It's not the role of government to raise or establish salaries for a business, unless you want to put them out of business, and then the government will move in and take over things, as can happen.
Maria?
States around us have a much higher minimum wage than Idaho. I believe that there is a way. I do support a higher minimum wage. And we need to look at being creative and how do we balance both helping the employers and helping the workers. And I believe it's possible.
So the answer to both questions is no. No, I don't support raising the minimum wage, and no, a family of 4 couldn't live on the minimum wage, and it was never, that's not the purpose of it. If the government wants to social engineer so that the minimum wage is what a family of 4 can live on, it will kill our economy.
Like it or not, we're on the global economy, and our labor people compete with the Chinese people. If you raise the minimum wage, that's just less jobs and more jobs for Chinese. For an individual, they need more education, and they can do what I did. You can work 16 hours a day.
No, I do not support it because I think it's gonna end up losing jobs. This economy can't take it. Small businesses can't afford it. And if they have to pay higher wages, they're gonna lose at least one employee for business.
I think we're blessed to live in the United States of America, and we have one of the highest standards of living in the world. And no, I would not raise minimum wage. Thank you.
Okay, I have a quick announcement, and you can applaud if you'd like. The Bears selected Boise State defensive end Shea McClellan. In pick number 19.
Oh, good.
So, hey, little excitement. We could ask, what team should he have gone to? Maybe we can have a little picture there. Anyway, all right. Frank has the next question. And Roger, you're first.
Never followed the Broncos, I was told. I'll ask this anyway. This is from the audience, and it's pretty straightforward. Should urban renewal be abolished as the law stands today?
Yes, it should. The Declaration of Independence establishes that the ends do not justify the means. In other words, the government was there to protect our rights, and they do it through the consent of the governed. Urban renewal bypasses the consent of the governed, and I don't think that's right.
Robert?
Oh, sorry. I was expecting that way. As I said earlier, I think it's more of a local issue. I think that there's good things that can be done through urban renewal. I don't believe that it has the safeguards it needs to be responsible to the people who pay the taxes. So if your question is without any changes to it, if my choice is that or the other, then I would probably support getting rid of it.
But you can say if you would,
Yeah.
if you wanted to continue with alterations.
Yeah, and that's my point. I think because again, urban renewal isn't just about Nampa. Urban renewal is something that's used all over the state, and I believe that the citizens of each individual municipality should have a say in whether they want it or don't want it.
Steve, I'm going to let you answer now so that all three of you can answer, and then if there's a rebuttal, we can take care of it with the three of you.
Yeah, urban renewal should be abolished, I think. It's just an unconstitutional way it's not constitutional in its the way that it taxes the citizens, and so that's what I would do.
Okay, Todd?
I do think it's a local issue. I look at urban renewal kind of like a prescription drug. It can do good things if it's used right, but it can be abused. It has opportunities to promote economic development and put in infrastructure that we need to encourage businesses to locate in our communities. But again, it can be abused. I think we had some good sideboards that were put in place a year ago in a session as far as more transparency and requiring elections to create new ones. So I'm open to more change and reform, but I think they can be used correctly.
Urban renewal is a way to get into the pocketbook. It's actually economic development under the guise of the ability to get the money, and that's through urban renewal. It's taking money, diverting it from property tax, and using it for not urban renewal. We don't need urban renewal in Idaho. And yeah, I've had a bill to kill urban renewal the last 2 years, and we should do it.
I believe it needs to be improved, not abolished, because there are some good things. Yes, there are some problems, but it's done some good. It can continue to do some good. So my answer is no, it should not be abolished. Okay?
I think we often say we want local control, but we also, on the other hand, often take away the tools that our cities use to have local control. I think, as Todd said, it can be used, it can be good and bad. And hopefully some of the things that we did to improve it with transparency and having elections will improve it. But I think it should be a tool that local governments have for their communities.
There have been improvements made with especially with new districts requiring a vote to be established. There are good projects in the state where people are quite happy with it. There are others that people are quite unhappy with it. Overall, I think the minuses outweigh the pluses, and I would favor repeal.
Yes, I think it should be abolished. I think it opened up the back door, and even local issues, we are all state citizens, and we should be protected that way. And I think everybody I've spoken to door to door has agreed that it should be done away with.
I think any tool that we have that might be able to create jobs in this economy ought to be kept and used. Are there changes that need to be made? Yes. As I was going to state earlier, I saw it in action in Twin Falls Market. They didn't use their funds for anything but infrastructure, and that's how they brought Chiboney into Twin Falls. And I heard the other day it will be over 1,400 jobs in the next 2 years. That to me is a success. So used correctly, I would keep it.
Okay, fair enough. Shall we move to the next question? And we'll start with you, Maria, again. 30 seconds.
This is a question from the audience, fairly simple, straightforward, about a complicated issue. Are you for or against the Students Come First program?
Well, I know I am for education, and I am for quality education. I don't believe that the Students Come First actually does put students first. And so probably the answer is, you know, I don't support that program because I don't believe there's rhetoric that's used to make it look good, but is it really good?
Thank you. I did support it. I think the goal behind that was to give our school districts more control over who's in the classrooms, to be able to reward good teachers, and to recognize the importance of technology that in the lives of the kids that we've got now. It's how they interact with their environment. It's going to be important for their education. So I think it was a good thing, and we will continue to tweak it and improve it. But I'm glad that we are going that way.
I would say it's only a partial step. We should never be satisfied with the status quo. I think the innovative 8 to 6 program, textbooks on computers, that sort of thing is necessary in today's world. So as time goes on, I'm sure there will be more ideas set forth, and hopefully some good ones will be implemented.
Yes, I support education, and I do believe that the students should always come first.
All I know is I have a 13-year-old granddaughter. When I can't use my iPhone, I hand it to her, and she fires it up and puts all kinds of apps and everything else on it. I think it's not right that our schools are not to that level of technology when our kids can get it outside the classroom.
I think I spoke about this earlier, my question from Roger. Again, I think that education is something that should constantly be evolving. One of the things I didn't mention in the question, or the answer to the question, I do strongly favor more power to the principals. I think that one of the things that we could benefit from is more structure in how the schools operate from a leader, from somebody who's the head of that institution. So that's one of the things that I'd like to see as we go forward.
Students Come First, I think, is a step in the right direction. I support getting away from tenure. I think probably everyone has experienced a bad teacher or your children have, and they can have a profound negative effect on that child the rest of their life. I know, because I've seen it. Just because someone is a tenured teacher doesn't mean they're the best teacher. I think we need to retain our good teachers, be able to pay them more. I approve the step forward with technology. I mean, the world's using technology.
The Students Come First program, I think that there's some problems with it that need to be addressed. The taking away of the teacher's tenure, I don't think that was the best thing they should have done. The teachers that are there deserve to be treated better. They do an excellent job in teaching our children, and I think that in this program, they ended up the person at the bottom of the hill, and they need to be treated better. So there's some things that need to be worked on there.
I support Students Come First. I think it's a good thing that we're looking for ways to stretch our dollars that are limited. I support the use of more technology in the classroom, not to replace the teacher, but to provide an additional tool. I think it helps students today learn more effectively. I like the incentives for effective teachers. I like the fact that collective bargaining is limited and relooked at, and there's more local control. Don't like protecting ineffective teachers solely based on seniority.
In the interest of saving time, Mr. Osborne nailed it.
I don't remember what he said. Sorry.
Okay, we have one last question before we go into our final round, and since Mr. Osborne nailed it, we'll go ahead and start with you for this answer next.
Again, this is a question from a member of the audience, and I'll paraphrase it essentially. How would you address the failure of some lawmakers to pay their taxes?
It's up to me, huh? Judge and jury, but if they haven't paid their taxes, there's a prison down there in California that takes tax cheats, and I think that's where they ought to end up.
Well, I believe there's already government entities in place to make them pay their taxes or pay for their crimes. So I don't think it's really a legislative thing.
You know, I don't understand how a legislator could be elected and not pay his taxes.
I'd say you would prosecute them the same way that you'd prosecute me as a Nampa citizen.
If a lawmaker can't obey the laws, then why do we have to obey them? Legislators are not above the law. If they can't pay their own taxes, then they shouldn't be trying to spend ours.
I think that if there's a legislator that's not paying his taxes and he's defiantly doing it, then he shouldn't be a legislator. Just because somebody might fall behind a little bit on their taxes, I don't think that's a crime as long as they work towards paying them off.
Well, as taxpayers, we pay the legislators' salaries, and if the particular legislator and taxpayer isn't paying, then maybe he shouldn't get paid. I think I say that somewhat facetiously, but there's also mechanisms to enforce failure to pay taxes. They can seize their property and do other things. They should be treated just like any other taxpayer.
You sincerely do not want to cross IRS. I would imagine that if someone really isn't paying their taxes, they would be taken care of rather quickly by those people. They have no conscience, and they won't let the term legislator sway them one bit. I think that the mechanism is there, and if they are not paying, then they will be taken care of.
The way that I would like to see voters in Idaho address some of these issues that deal with the integrity of public servants, elected officials, is by voting for people who are integrous and who are honest. The bottom line, as was said earlier, right? Just like we can elect, you know, we have issues here in Canyon County too, and it's our duty to vote for integrous, honest people that are not going to abuse any system. I mean, how can they be disobeying laws and yet be lawmakers? That's so incongruent.
I know of one legislator who actually hasn't paid his taxes, and he actually made the argument that he shouldn't have to pay them while he is a legislator, which I thought was a kind of a silly argument. The federal judge overseeing his case thought the same thing and has thrown that out. The IRS has forcefully invited him to pay all his back taxes, and he will, or else he'll be sharing time with them.
Okay? We're going to now do our close. And after the closes are all done, then you can do your round of applause for everyone. And you guys have done a great job. Robert Schaefer, we're going to start with you. I should say Bob, because that's really how we know you. Bob.
It's easier for people to remember,
Okay.
all ages of
Right.
people.
Hey. So we're going to go 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Won't take that long,
Okay.
in the interest of saving our valuable time.
And Maria, you will be last.
The voters of whatever district I've been in 12 and I've been in 11, have returned me repeatedly because I value them. I honor them and I respect the people. They came before government ever existed, and you have to put people first. And if they like what I've been attempting to do the last couple of years to restore their property taxes and stop, let's find another source of funding urban renewal if we want urban renewal. Or since it's really economic development, let's find a source for funding economic development, but not your property taxes that you never voted to be diverted. Vote for me, please. Thank you.
The most important characteristic of a legislator in my mind is integrity. Right behind that is common sense. I will work hard to bring both of those to the Idaho Senate. I'm a common sense conservative. I have experience and success in the public and private sector, and I'm committed and will work hard to engage businesses and voters in District 12. My first and highest priority will be the economy. Again, government doesn't create jobs, it helps and provides an environment where the private sector can create jobs. In today's world, at the moment, the economy is the most important thing. I will preserve traditional family values and do my best, again, to engage the voters, understand their perspective, so I can be a better legislator. Please vote for Todd Lake, the Idaho Senate.
If elected, I would bring to the legislature a little bit more common sense, I think, and try to get away from some of the money and the membership that seems to be guiding it these days. Look for ways to get better funding for our education. I think that our government has grown too large, and we need to shrink it down a little bit and take some of that revenue that is soaking up and put it back into the general fund and in towards our essential programs like education and to work towards maintaining our agriculture and there's just a lot of things that are going on there that just aren't right, and I would be the person to stand up and say when I think that something's not right, it's time to vote no. So vote for me May 15th and help put me in the legislature working for you.
I think both of my opponents are good men. I don't have anything against them. So what I'm going to say is not directed at them. I'm just saying, going to relate some experiences I've had. And I'm not saying they lack these values either, but I think a legislator now and increasingly in the future is going to have the courage to stand up against an increasingly powerful federal government. The states are going to have to draw the line. The way I see it, we have an imperial presidency that disregards the Constitution. And the time might come when the states are going to have to stand up for our constitutional rights. I have a history of, I can be stubborn sometimes. When I was in junior high, 1964, I was one of 3 in my class of 30 to wear a Barry Goldwater button. Even though it got ripped off every day, thrown across the room, I would go get it and pick it up and put it back on. When I served on the school board, it was going through the time when the charter issue was very divisive in our community. And I stood up for what I believed was right. And I feel I have the courage to do what is right and protect our constitutional rights. Thank you.
I completely agree. I do think that in the next 10 to 15 years, the states' rights are going to be a primary focus, and I think that we need to have people at the State House that will stand up to the federal government and protect Idaho's individual states' rights. I am proud that we've talked tonight that jobs and the economy are a large part of people's concerns, and they are mine. And I'm proud of the fact that a lot of Idaho's largest companies, the people who create those jobs, have been supportive of the candidacy, not because of any specific things that they think I'm going to do for them, but because they recognize the fact that, or at least they believe that I will be a good, sound economic voice for the state. I think we all want the same things. We want a strong economy, we want good schools for our kids to be educated in, and we want to have a nice place to raise our families. This is a critical election. 25 current representatives and senators are not running for re-election, so we're going to have a large turnover. Please remember Robert Anders' seat A, or 12 seat A.
Unaffiliated.
No.
Well, I'd like to thank Vicki, the Idaho Press-Tribune and Channel 2 for the opportunity to introduce ourselves to you, the voting public. Thanks to you, the public, for taking the time and the interest to be here tonight, come find out, be better informed about us. Thank my family, my wife, friends for the loyal support and encouragement. I was recently told by a new friend that the core of relationships is trust. There are 2 building blocks that correspond: character, who we are, and competence, what we know. If elected, it'll be my personal goal to bring trust back to serving. Let's put new blood in the State House and vote Rick Youngblood May 15th.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. It does my heart good to know that people actually do want to know who they're voting for and what their values are. You know, I'm not a politician. I'm just somebody who feels like we need to get some common sense back into the government to speak for us. I believe if it's not good enough for me, it's not going to be good enough for you. And the laws that are passed should be researched more, and it should be right for everybody and hold up to their constitutional rights. I'm a very strong-moraled Christian woman, and I believe that I can be your voice in the legislature. Please vote Sherry Nivell on May 15th.
For the first time in a number of elections, the voters have a true choice. I would only say my reputation is more important than my bank account. It is your choice.
Thank you. I'm Kirk McKenzie, and I do believe that I have experience and been an effective legislator, and I'm asking for your support again. I've worked hard, and I do have a record there. that has been demonstrated over time of limited government, small taxes, of supporting core principles of the Republican Party. Because of that, some of the different organizations that have supported me have included the NRA with an A+ rating after I carried that bill in 2008 to consolidate our concealed carry laws at the state level rather than having local jurisdictions change it when you cross county lines. Idaho Chooses Life has named me a friend for life. The food producers has named me an Ag All-Star most years. Farm Bureau has supported me, a number of our different ag industries and businesses. And I think I do try to bring a common sense, conservative voice to the legislature, and I thank you for considering me.
And again, thank you, Vicki, Scott, KBOI, Idaho Press-Tribune, and thank you for being here to get to know us, to have the opportunity to ask questions, and to hear what we have to say. I want you to remember Maria Mabit for the Senate in District 12. I want you to remember that the Democratic primary is open. Invite you to really look at this opportunity that we have as we start this decade after redistricting in looking at how these next 10 years should start off, and we've got that great opportunity. Hopefully that you will be able to look at the individual, to look at the integrity, to look at the qualities, and to choose the best so that we can together have the best here in our community, here in our state. I want to thank my 13-year-old daughter for being here to support me always, and I really care, as I said earlier, and it comes from the heart. It's not just from the lip sound, and it's not just hollow words, in that we need to do the best for our children, for our workers, you know, for the elderly, and for those that live here. Thank you.
Okay. Great topic. I would just like to once again thank the City of Napa for allowing us to use this room and for the setup. I always promise them that we will be out of the building, even in rain, at 9:15 so that we're not putting the city into overtime hours. So please help me out and help the mayor out with that. I don't want to have to read about that in the paper. And also, I'd like to especially thank our partner, KBOI TV News, and Klein, and Scott Logan from Channel 2, who's been here every night, and our own reporter, Mike Butts, and a photographer and multimedia editor, Greg Kreller, who's also been here, and our opinion page editor, Phil Bridges, who, if you write a letter to the editor, that's who you're interacting with. So, and by the way, letters to the editor are due by the 9th of May, and at noon. So we want to thank everybody, and you can watch this again at idahopress.com, and thank you very much for coming.